goes. Yeah.
Sorry, I just pressed that. I'm really sorry.
No problem. No. Yeah. So so the way people shop, the way people stream videos and entertainment, the way people buy cryptocurrencies, right? How many crypto exchanges are there out there today? But at that time, about maybe 4 years ago when we were first started, we hadn't seen as much innovation in the public sector. So, for example, drivers still paid for parking using coupons, right? The ones that you buy at 7-Eleven and you like stick out. Citizens, for example, still apply for government schemes for PR using paper forms, right? Can you imagine? And government websites were also built by individual vendors, and there was no common standard for user experience, for accessibility, for visually impaired people, for instance. So what if we could build a modern tech startup that worked on public good problems? And that was the notion that really started OGP. So next slide. Yeah, basically this. What if we could build a modern tech company that worked on public sector problems? Next slide. And basically that was how OGP was born. So we're an experimental team of engineers, designers, product managers, and now many other specialties as well, like product operations, like policy people. But the basis of it is that we build technology for public good. So just to show you, just to share some of our products. Next slide. I think one of the defining features of our team is that we have a lot of autonomy to start experiments and build products that are for the public good in areas that we care about, right? So here, I think you can see some familiar products like the parking app, like the Scam Shield app. But there's also in here DGMC, right? That plus mc.gov.sg that was started because someone on the team wanted to make sending MCs easier. Like when you send your MC to your boss, you don't need to take a photo of the paper MC, right? That's a medical certificate for people who are not familiar. And I recall we also built an open source product once that was targeted at improving conversation around controversial topics like racism, right? So they would ask like a controversial question and people get to vote like how they feel about it. So we've built like quite a number of cool products and like feel free to ask about them later. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, so just to give a flavor of how we operate, we basically focus on 3 things. So the first is experimentation. Basically, this is brainstorming, coming up with many different ideas for how to create impact and improve people's lives. We have a hackathon in January. We have 30% time set aside for everyone to pursue like passion projects in public good. So that's the experimentation bit. We want to come up with many ideas and filter out the best ones that are right for execution, right? Second is demonstration. So demonstrating that these ideas and these solutions can actually create impact. This usually comes in the scale-up phase where we evangelize to agencies, where we convince users to adopt our products, and we see how much impact and how much cost savings, for example, can actually be realized on those products. The third is propagation. So once we've realized that we've developed a best practice in something, and this doesn't have to be a tech product, right? This could be best practices in areas like performance evaluation, for example. We also want to speak to other agencies in the wider government to share how we do things differently and how this could be adapted to their organizations to help them as well and to achieve some progress, right? Yeah. Next slide. So that's it for an intro to OGP, and we're happy to share more later. As an intro to myself personally, I'm product manager on the team. I work mainly on our government form manager, which is called Form SG, and also on a product that we have an internal name for called Zandemic. That's our COVID case operations system. Yeah. Next slide. So quick intro to Form SG is the Singapore government's form manager. This is what it looks like for public officers who want to create forms, and they can create forms as quickly in as little as like 5 to 10 minutes, which is a huge improvement from the days where they had to like print paper forms and distribute them. Next. So Form SG is used pretty widely across the government today. So these are just some of the examples of things that Forestry is being used for. We've had forms that have like over 1 million responses, and I think like most recently, you guys might have seen like the LGBTQ opinion form that was launched by Reach, so that was also done on Forestry. Yeah. Next. Since its launch in 2017, like Forestry has had quite a lot of impact. So there have been more than 125 million responses submitted in total. We've digitalized, actually this number is outdated, I think probably over 300,000 forms today. And over 80,000 public officers have used Forestry at least once in the course of their work. Next. So very quickly, just the other product that I've worked on is a product called Zendemic. It's a Zendesk integrated system that automates and tracks COVID case operations. What this means is that when someone gets COVID and becomes a COVID case, they automatically become created as a case in our system, and they when they move through the different stages of processing, for example, being picked up at home, being conveyed to a facility, later on being discharged and going back home. All these status updates are automatically being tracked and reflected in Zendesk. So this is the technology that we've built, right? And the screenshot over here shows that Zendesk can show all the status updates of a patient throughout their life cycle of, like, I guess, being a COVID patient. Yeah. So this has been very helpful for example, call center officers when they field inquiries, right? Like, where's my grandmother? What's the latest status on her? They can very easily look it up here instead of having to take one day to turn around on that inquiry. Next. Yeah, so I'm not going to explain this diagram, but basically this is the architecture of what Zendemic looks like on the back end, right? Like there are basically many there are many logical branches on the back end, and depending on what kind of risk profile you have as a patient, you might go to a different route for processing. Yeah. Next. Yeah. So now I'll hand over to Christabel to introduce herself. Christabel.
Hi, thanks, Sonia. So hi everyone. I'm a software engineer here at OGP. I've been here for coming to 4 years now. And then over my time here, I've done kind of full stack development from front end, back end, infra, mobile dev. And then some of the products that I'm working on currently are Scam Shield, and then some stuff in the healthcare space as well. So I'll just quickly give a short intro on Scam Shield. Next slide. Yeah, so I don't know if you all have used Scam Shield before, but basically it's an application, a mobile application that works in the background to filter scam messages and calls. So currently it's only available on iOS. That's due to some native constraints on Android. But what it does on iOS is that it combines the functionality of a machine learning model, as well as an active blacklist that is maintained using the results of the ML model, and also the efforts of the SPF officers. And then additionally, the app also allows users to report spam and provides simple bite-sized information on recent scams to educate people. Next slide, please. So how the scam messages go through their life cycle in Scam Shield is basically when a scammer sends an SMS, if it's from an unknown number, so a number that's not in your contacts list, it will go through the Scam Shield application. And what that involves is an on-device machine learning model that will filter the messages. So something that's of utmost importance is our users' privacy, right? We don't want their legitimate messages from people that they know to ever reach our servers, to ever leave their phones. And that's why the machine learning model is on device. So if the model determines that this is a scam message with high confidence, the SMS will be moved to a junk folder, and it will also be sent to our server for reporting purposes on the SPF dashboard. Next. Yeah, so maybe if I can just give a brief description of the model. So this was developed by two of our data scientists who are also female. So the model is basically a BERT model that we that we like enhance using an augmented data set. So why we use BERT is because BERT can consider the full context of a word by looking at the words that come before and after it, right? So like there are different ways to represent a word. BERT uses embeddings that also use a cosine function to calculate the similarity between words that appear in like different contexts. So for example, I think I just gave a like really simple example here, but he developed an interest in art and something like quick loans, low interest apply now. Some representations like bag of words would consider them like the same word. So they would be given the same representation, but in BERT, they have different embeddings because like clearly they mean different things in these two different contexts. So after using BERT, we got pretty decent results, but the model was still getting confused between similar messages. So things like your verification SMS versus your confirmation SMS, it wasn't sure how to handle that. So we actually augmented our data set by substituting key terms in some of these messages to help the model learn better. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so that's how the application deals with scam messages. For scam calls, it's based on the blacklist that, as I said, it's a combination of the results of the ML model as well as manual blacklisting actions by the SPF officers. So the calls are blocked if they are not, the number is not in your context list and it checks out against the blacklist. And then so you won't even receive these calls. Yeah, next. So additional functions that we found to be useful were allowing users to report to SMS, allowing users to report SMSs or calls that our application actually missed. So yeah, it's really simple. The interface is just a field for you to put in the spam number and the message that was sent to you. Either that or you can forward the SMS to a scam shield number. Yeah, next. The last feature that we decided to include was actually push notifications on the latest scams that have been occurring in like the message space. And we found this to be important because Scam Shield cannot actually catch everything. Like no ML model is perfect. So this allows the SPF officers and NCPC to like quickly reach the users and inform them, you know, like to be aware of these scams. Yeah. Next. So that's like the user-facing side of our application. On the enforcement side, as I mentioned before, the SMSs, if they're detected as scam, they get forwarded to our server, and this shows up in a dashboard, which is accessible by SPF officers. We indicate a level of confidence there because this dashboard is a combination of the messages that were detected by our ML model, but also those that users report. So when users manually report the messages or calls, our classifier will run once more on those reports, and then it will give a level of confidence. So this actually helps the SPF officers pick out which are the like message templates that our classifier may have missed and allow them to like take action, like give more attention to these messages and take action more quickly because our users would be, you know, reading and acting on these messages. Next. So there is a block numbers tab, and these are the numbers that the SPF officers have identified for blocking. So basically, they are known to be associated with like illegal activities. If there's any other numbers that they get from like their work outside of Scam Shield, they can add it as well, and they can unblock. And this is because some of the numbers that were previously used for illicit activities might be transferred to like legitimate users, and we don't want them to be blocked from carrying out like their regular messaging. Yeah. Next. Okay, so now I'll hand over the time to Chi Ling, who will tell you more about her work in the healthcare space.
Thanks, Christabel. Yeah, my name is Chi Ling, and on the team, I work on several things. One is to help to scale the team and to build product verticals like health tech and more recently scam tech. So my favorite thing to work on the team is a lot of healthcare related things, including COVID-19 products, but also beyond that, looking at building out our population health strategy by building our case management systems for medical social workers. So in the next slide, I'll share a little bit about what our tech for COVID-19 looks like. I think it's been about coming to 2.5 years since COVID-19 started, and it's been a roller coaster ride for so many of us. For OGP in particular, we've gone through many different phases, and our products sort of take that shape as well. If you see these little buckets, we have anything from testing to quarantine. Christabel herself was actually very much involved in Homer, which is a quarantine application that enforces home quarantine in the beginning of COVID. And then Sonjia was working on Zendemic, which is a care and recovery case management system. Various parts of the OGP team was activated at different points, often within very short notice, sort of like dragged out of bed and having to appear suddenly in MOH to solve problems. It's been a little chaotic and hectic, but I think what came out of this is definitely a suite of products that's helped Singapore respond more quickly and in a more timely way to the different phases and variants of the COVID-19 virus. So a lot of the apps that you see, like Trace Together and Health Hub, we also interact with, and in fact they pull data from the COVID-19 management backbone that OGP manages. So your test and vaccination records, every day, millions of these records are pulled from our databases to be displayed on Trace Together and Health Hub. Later on, I'll share a little bit more about what goes on behind the scenes for some of these statuses. Next slide, please. So our involvement sort of started in December 2020, eve of Christmas, when our first batch of vaccine arrived on our shores. I think Christabel in particular might remember this very fondly, that we had 2 weeks to build out something that worked and could help with the national rollout of the vaccine within the next few months. And our objectives was, of course, to get everyone vaccinated as safely as possible. We had very limited supply, so every dose was precious. We wanted to give priority to those who are at risk, like seniors, as well as healthcare workers. And importantly, to build public trust, we want to make sure that at all clinics and vaccination centers, there were no queues, no long lines that would in fact increase the spread of COVID-19, right? So in next slide, you'll see what we've come up with was a vaccine appointment system. And in building this appointment system, which I'm sure you have used at one point or another, it was quite important to think about inclusion. Typically for our team, we could kind of choose, different subsegments of the population when we design our products, right? We didn't have to, think so much, or maybe most product teams, you probably can choose your customer segments. Maybe you're serving just the young professionals, and you might exclude the elderly. In this case, we're really serving everybody, and we had to make sure there's a way to reach both the digitally savvy and the digitally excluded or less savvy individuals in Singapore. So what we did was to really break down the problem into different parts. One is to think about it for seniors who may not have smartphones or who don't know how to go online. The approach there was to get volunteers as well as next of kin to help access a proxy booking system or the appointment system itself to book slots for them. There were a lot of volunteers going door to door knocking, Silver Generation ambassadors, and other people association volunteers. So we built a special sort of proxy booking front end for these volunteers to help seniors book appointments. And so far we've administered more than 13 million vaccine doses, including booster shots, to our whole population of about 5 million people. There were also various design considerations. I won't go into too much detail since we might not have too much time, but you could see that the way we ordered our vaccination centers were based on slots available, so that we could direct members of public to vaccine centers with more slots, and they didn't have to wait for too long of time when they arrive. And contrary to many appointment booking systems for COVID-19 vaccine, we decided to secure both doses for our members of public. So instead of just showing up at the place and getting your first dose, you would actually have appointments to both the doses to make sure that you see through the whole course. And in doing so, we managed to maximize the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine. In the next slide. So earlier on, I mentioned that applications like Trace Together and Health Hub pull millions of records from our database every day. And this piece of infrastructure is actually called the COVID-19 management backbone. It's pretty much invisible to most people in Singapore, but it plays three important functions. The first is it ensures that the data is clean and validated, right? A lot of this information is actually captured in legacy systems, such as the National Immunization Record, the NIR, which was a system that's designed in the 1990s. So as you can imagine, some of the data validation checks may not be exactly in place, and formatting might not be very consistent. So CMB plays the role of this sort of like not just a traffic controller, but gatekeeper, right? To say, okay, if your data matches my data format, you're in, if not, you're out. And that helps to actually ensure that our data flows smoothly and seamlessly across all the other AT systems that rely on COVID-19 management backbone for data. The second thing it does is that it applies consistent business logic. And this is very important because if you think about your vaccine doses, the raw records aren't actually a status, right? Several raw records add up to a status. So for example, you might say one Pfizer and one Moderna shot adds to, you can derive vaccination status, vaccinated status from these two shots, or 3 Sinovac shots equals vaccinated, right? Some of this logic differs from vaccine brand to vaccine brand. So having a central place to process all this logic would help to minimize sort of data asynchronicity across all our systems. And the third is that it serves as a central data exchange gateway. This is true for about 80 systems across government. So how does, for example, ICA know, if a traveler coming into Singapore is vaccinated or not? Or how does the hospital know when they're admitting patients that this person has also taken a vaccine or is tested ART positive or PCR positive? All that is informed by data that's stored on CMB. Okay, and initially, I think when this infrastructure, this piece didn't exist, we pretty much had delayed test records transmission. You would have people, being informed that they were a COVID positive patient a little late, 2 or 3 days late, and that sort of loses some precious time in terms of isolation and containing the spread of COVID-19. Okay, in the next slide, I wanted to move on a little bit to share what we have been working on post-pandemic. Okay, I shouldn't say post-pandemic. Every time I say this, a new wave comes. But in endemic, we're hoping to really make this something that is more empowering, for citizens to take self-responsibility, to manage and share their own COVID-19 data and keep track of whether they are infected or not. I think in the past, or to some extent today still, if you're a C+ patient, the whole government machinery gets activated and gets triggered. And then all the conveyancing processes starts, right? It runs like clockwork now, thanks to the work of Sonjia and others on the team. But in future, the hope is that in endemic, we won't have to take such a heavyweight approach. So in the next slide, so what Sync seeks to do is to allow citizens to have full control over their COVID-19 data, to have a single interface for sharing with multiple organizations on a consent-based and a subscription-based approach or basis. And what this means is that it allows the employers to be the first line of defense when it comes to detecting COVID-19 clusters. Instead of relying on the government to tell you, hey, you have a cluster here, or relying on your workers to tell you, sorry, I'm COVID-19 positive, I cannot show up to work tomorrow, Sync automatically pings organizations to tell them that their staff is tested AG or PCR positive. So then employers can tell the staff, please stay home, do not come to work. And if there are clusters, the ministry can also be informed quickly and take the necessary public health actions. And how it works in the next slide is actually pretty straightforward. A user on Sync can, here you go. Yeah, a user can give consent and submit the ART swab test results on Sync. All the records are pulled from what I mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 management backbone. And this data can be shared with only the organizations that this individual gives consent to getting. And the difference between this and maybe like a screenshot over WhatsApp is that employers and organizations can be assured of the authenticity and veracity of the data they receive. So instead of having to check where's the timestamp or like, hey, you know, the screenshot is chopped up here and there, they receive a nice consolidated daily report of everybody who has shared their COVID-19 statuses with. So in the next slide, we see that so far there's been about 200,000 users across 500 public and private sector organizations. I think we launched this about 2 to 3 months ago in sort of a beta trial. And since then, we have opened this up to more private sector organizations. And it's sort of like a little wallet, right, for you to keep track of your COVID-19 status and to, instead of paying, you sort of transact and share your statuses with any organization who needs to know. Yep, so with that, hopefully that this will really be endemic finally, and we don't have to build, you know, another round of COVID-19 products. And we can be on to more exciting things like Scam Shield and more Form S3 features. And maybe in time to come, new OGP products that can serve longer term peacetime needs. I'll stop there. And I think that the beauty of having such a small group is that we can have a conversation actually instead of a Q&A. So perhaps, you know, anytime, I'll hand it over to Avery, but anytime you have questions or you just want to share some of your thoughts and reflections, I think that would be really cool for us to hear from you as well. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing all those products. Actually, I thought those were super cool. I remember like coming back from overseas, and then I had to do quarantine. I was using the Homer app. I just thought it was really well designed, and like to be speaking to the people who built that app, it's quite crazy. So I actually just wanted to also mention that, like what Chi Ling said, this is just going to be just like a fireside chat. But if you do have any questions, like Charlotte did, just type it in the channel, in the chat, and I will ask it. But actually, maybe since this question is there for now, let's start with this. Charlotte says, hi, can you share more about what data models and or machine learning types are used for the project? I imagine this is for the Scam Shield project, Charlotte?
I think, okay, yeah, I guess about the ML types. So we use, oh, okay, and COVID-19 as well. So COVID-19 has no ML, but so for Scam Shield, as I mentioned, we use the BERT model, and the training and all of that is done in TensorFlow. And so the final model that is uploaded to the device is a TensorFlow-like file as well. Yeah. I'm not sure what you mean by data models. Could you like maybe elaborate a bit more? But maybe before you type an answer, generally, like when we are deciding, right, the ML techniques. So like for the ML, I'm obviously not the most qualified person to talk about it because we had the data scientists work on it. But yeah, okay, so we used the BERT model, and as I explained just now, the reason why we did that was because initially we tried bag of words. The way bag of words represents the tokenizes the words and represents them was very simplistic, right? So it doesn't take into account the context. So a lot of the words that you see in scams, like interest and win and stuff like that, they're not necessarily like indicative that that message is a scam. And so that's why the data scientists decided to move to BERT, because the embeddings, which is a set of, I think, 765 numbers that represent each word, they actually capture the context that the word is used in. So like in the example that I showed just now, interest in art and like, are you interested in loans? That would have very different representations. And after BERT transforms the words into a set of representations, that's like used as, let's call them X variables. And then we assign a set of weights, let's call those W, to the embeddings. So W values, those are like the model's learned weights. And so you use those two to calculate the probability of the message being spam. And you do that using like logarithmic regression. Yeah. So hopefully that's like enough detail. That's about as much as I understand as well, because I didn't implement the code myself. Yeah, right, that's right. Yeah, so in terms of data models, I think like on the data science side, so it's everything that I just mentioned. In terms of like the engineering side, generally we go through a few processes of like understanding the domain space. So like the domain requirements, like, and then sometimes we also do the, you know, the ER diagrams to represent all the different entities that we have, and then we decide on like the best data models based on that.
Cool. Charlotte, should I have it? How about, okay, so I'm actually genuinely curious about how Sonjia, Christabel, and Chi Ling, how your journeys at OGP started. How did you land your current position at OGP? Maybe we'll start with Sonjia.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I was a public servant before joining OGP. I was working in the National Research Foundation. It's a little known department of the Prime Minister's office. Basically, what we do is fund research. So I was there for a while, and I was funding research in, or helping the government fund research in, you know, computer science and digital projects. And I wanted to do something more creative. And I guess tangible, rather than just analyze and then you know, kind of like recommend funding, right? I wanted to create something, to create an experience for someone who would feel the impact out of that. So and if you realize everything else in government that's creative is mostly outsourced. For example, you can't be the one to design the HDB block, right? Like public housing, you can't be the one to do that because that's outsourced, right? Even like designing like our national park is probably outsourced as well. But we do one thing creative, which is tech. So that's how I decided to explore this space. And then after that, I left government for a while on an attachment to another tech company, Indeed, where I was a product manager as well. And then I joined OGP as a product manager. And I really love it here. So I'll probably be staying for a while. Yeah. Next, maybe, I don't know, like Christabel?
Okay, yeah, so actually OGP was my first job out of like school. I did a master's in computer science because actually my bachelor's degree was nothing related to like software engineering. I did a bachelor's in philosophy, politics, and economics, and then decided that I didn't want to be like a banker, a consultant, or economist. So like I did very, very basic HTML and CSS like in a separate course. So like the UK has something like Women Who Code. It's called Code First Girls, and they basically support like university and university students and professionals in like by providing these like extracurricular courses. So I did that. I was like, okay, this is like quite cool. I want to learn more beyond just, you know, HTML and CSS to set up a blog kind of thing. Yeah, so that's why I did a 1-year master's in computer science, and then I took on this job. It was like a little bit of like a leap of faith because I didn't do web development when I was doing my master's. I did stuff like compilers and like other lower level stuff. So when I came in, and everyone here knew like, oh, backend and front end. And I was like, what's the backend and front end? And yeah, so it was a lot of learning on the job, like a steep learning curve. And obviously I had like the help of really nice senior engineers to like guide me along as well. So yeah, for like first year here, it was just like trying to copy the stuff that they did and get that to work. Yeah, and then, well, here we are now, so.
How many years have you been at, how many years have you been at OGP?
I think it's 3 years, 10 months. Yeah, so.
Nice. And you kind of like, that's really sick.
Yeah.
Chi Ling, how about your journey? Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say like the first year was like quite a struggle, as in because I had to obviously like download a lot of information, but I think there was a moment where everything started like clicking, and then since then it's obviously been much easier, and I've been able to like help other junior engineers along as well from like what I've learned.
That's cool. Chi Ling, what about your journey?
Yeah, my journey is a little haphazard, I think. So I think I first learned CS or learned to code when I was in university. I was actually doing a bunch of research, and we were learning how to code in R. And then one thing led to another. After R, there was this course called CS 106A, which like I think half my college population took. And I found it really fun. We were building like Carol the robot memorably. And you know, one course led to another course, and before I knew it, I was like racking up enough courses to like do a degree in human computer interaction, symbolic systems. But when I came back to Singapore, I decided that I wasn't going to go into tech first because I really wanted to understand how government works. My thought then was, okay, if I join the public service, hey, what is this about? Like, how do people make decisions? And what is so different from, you know, between public service and private sector? Right before that, I was doing a private sector internship. And so public sector was actually relatively new for me. So instead of doing something that was in my comfort zone, building tech, I thought, okay, let's spend some time just having a helicopter view of how government works. So I spent 2 years in the Prime Minister's office. There's this little unit, also little known, just like NRF, this unit called Strategy Group, where they work with cabinet to form policies and longer range scenario planning. So we're like sort of crystal ball gazing 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, what would Singapore look like and what must happen, right? Then thereafter, from that exercise, I realized that something that must happen is that we will all age. Oh no. And 1 in 4 of us will be like older than 65 years old by 2030. And that's something that you can't really reverse, right? You can't really reverse time, and you can't really reverse aging yet. Until that day comes, we will all grow old, and it means we can either age miserably or age gracefully. And I realized that in Singapore, if you don't have money, actually you kind of age not very gracefully because our public infrastructure is really quite, it's very catered towards treating illnesses rather than helping people live well. So that sort of sparked my interest in healthcare, to really understand how do we build healthcare systems that help people live better and age more gracefully. So that posting with MOH was really quite eye-opening. And it led me to realize and discover, sort of full circle, coming back to technology, that there are some things that tech can solve. And in some cases, tech is the only thing that actually we need to double down on. So for example, in healthcare, we can't really get more people because our birth rate is falling, right? We're not having enough babies to actually replace the last generation of workers. So technology is really the only lever that we can use, short of importing more foreign labor. Technology is the one lever that we could rely on to increase manpower efficiency and productivity. So with that understanding, I came to OGP, and I didn't expect to work on healthcare, to be honest. My first day was, I was just intending to, okay, let's look at how products are done here, and see where that takes us. But COVID-19 spared no one across service. And first week I joined, we were thrown into vaccination operations. So that was my story. The theme, I think, would be, I would characterize it as haphazard. Yeah, but I think looking back, it's been adventure after adventure, and being in the trenches with, like I say, very fearless and amazing people like Sonjia, Christabel, and also Sarah, and various other OGP folks on this team has been incredibly eye-opening and rewarding. Yeah.
That's super cool. I mean, to even know that, like, you're able to kind of, yeah, to have that journey is kind of super cool. Sorry, Violin has a question that I thought I would ask. She says, "Hello everyone. Thanks for sharing. I'm curious regarding trace together-ish hardwares like the token and gate automation currently in place in some venues. Is that also handled by OGP, and if so, any challenges integrating the use of hardware and software together?" I'm not sure if it's like a product question. Would that be?
Yeah. Well, actually, Trace Together is built by a team within Government Digital Services. You might have heard of this team in GovTech. So I believe what happened was that some vendors who are operating these gates they sort of just embedded like a safe entry app, basically a safe entry app on the hardware. I'm not so sure they're sort of like they have another application sort of calling. It's not so much that the gantry itself is like integrated with the safe entry backend. It's more that they embedded maybe an iPad within the hardware, which is the gantry. Yeah, that's my understanding. For challenges of integrating the use of hardware and software might be, well, I think that's probably something that Trace Together team. Unfortunately, none of us here are from that team. They might be better placed to answer. Yeah.
In terms of kind of these projects that OGP is working on, I'm actually quite curious. So how these projects get pitched? Like, is there, because like in kind of your private company, you would have your main product, right? Like your Airbnb, and then you pitch features based on that. But like maybe for like Homer and the other vaccination stuff, those are quite clear. But stuff like forms or Scam Shield or like the parking app, like how, are these requirements coming from somewhere? Like how do they get pitched?
Maybe I can answer this one like a little bit, and maybe like Christabel and Chi Ling can also chime in. So the answer is every product gets launched in kind of a different way, and then there are different reasons why different products get launched. So one big thing is bureaucratic vulnerability. So if there is an opportunity in some part of the government, if some agency is looking to solve some big problem and they're ready to solve it, and they're supportive and they are receptive of the use of technology to solve the problem, then we can very easily work with them to solve that problem. However, there are some areas where there's more resistance, right? There's more conservative thinking. Then we probably might not work on that problem so soon. So that's how we kind of think about the vast universe of problems that are that there is in the government. Maybe I can just illustrate. So for FormSG, what happened was that we were helping, at the time we were a very young team, we were just helping different agencies out with their applications, help them build, help them code, right? And we realized that we were coding forms over and over again. So then the product manager that actually started FormSG, it's not me, it's another product manager. He thought, why not? Let's just build them a form manager so that they can do this by themselves, and I don't need to code the same HTML over and over again, right? So he on the side just started coding up a form manager. Originally, it wasn't resourced. But then as he got more and more agencies to use it, instead of asking him to build forms for them, then he could go to our director and say like, look, like there are actually like, 15 agencies using this now, and adoption is growing by the day. Let's put one engineer on this. So that's how FormSG got started, right? So that's a very typical, like, I guess, growth story of one of our products. And just now I mentioned, right, we have 30% time technically to work on passion projects. So a lot of those passion projects, once the founding team manages to get some adoption and growth on it, they can become officially resourced. Yeah. Yeah, Chi Ling or Christabel, y'all wanna add anything to that?
I think the way that Sonjia characterized Form's growth is quite like characteristic of OGP as a whole. So I mean, like, one of OGP's first products was parking, right? And like how parking even grew into such a big thing was not because like there was a great push from like within government to do this. In fact, I don't think it was one of the main priorities of like HDB or LTA to come up with something like parking. So the team just thought like, this is a really great idea. Why don't we do it? And then they got some users to test it, and the users loved it. And they were like, please go and tell, the government that we want more of this. So that's how that came about. And I think OGP, as we grew into our own team, we decided to like crystallize that into an actual like process. So like every year we have the whole of January to put aside like non-critical work and just work on like hackathon ideas. Yeah, so that's where we go out and speak to like agencies, public users, to find out like what are their pain points, and then tackle those pain points, prototype quickly, and then if there is like a legit use case and there's traction for that, then those will become like official projects that we will staff people on. And Scam Show is like one of those projects. So it was a hackathon project. And when it was pitched to like SPF and NCPC, they really liked it. They thought that like this was worth pursuing. So we built it. But then I think recently with all the OCBC scams and even COVID-19 scams, like scam blocking, scam filtering, enabling officers to actively target scams. So like, for example, the OCBC one won't continue for like months. It should have been like, terminated within like a week or so. Like it's gained even more attention and traction. And so that's why there's a lot of requests for Scam Shrew now. Is like, can you do this? Can we, build this system to enable officers to act faster and all of that? So sometimes it's a matter of like how the public and government, turn their attention towards different things as well. But so as Sonjia mentioned, like sometimes we work on a problem and then it goes into a lull for a bit, but then when we gain traction, then we're always, like ready to build on like what we've built on before. Yeah.
I think Christabel, your answer kind of answered Violin's question here in a way, like that you kind of go out and sort of gather the public's is the public or kind of just like your agencies, like users pain points, and then kind of target them. I suppose in terms of the second question, so about making decision in terms of interaction, I think Chi Ling mentioned shared that for the vaccination booking portal to account for accessibility. So how do you ensure that the design is best for the user? Chi Ling?
Yeah, sure. I think we can't really ensure that the design is best for the user, but we have a best guess, right? And we sort of put our best guess to test. I think what Christabel and Sonjia characterized is the ideal flow for a lot of OGP products growth. Ideally, we have time, right, to sort of shower our products with tender loving care, and then over time slowly iterate on different MVPs until they're mature enough to be rolled out to the whole of government or nationwide, right? Sometimes there's this other category of products that sort of thrust upon us in the sense that we kind of are brought into firefight. That's been the case, I think, for the case management system that Sonjia was working on, and for this vaccine appointment system as well. So for the booking portal, we didn't have very much time to ensure that the design is best for the user. We had a grand total of 2 days for user research and design. And we had a grand total of 2 weeks to build a working appointment system for the whole country. So I remember very distinctly, that was like eve of rollout. It was like 5th Jan. I was at the community care center on 3rd and 4th Jan, just squatting there, getting uncles and aunties to try out the booking app, and then watching them struggle. And on the site, well, like WhatsApping frantically the designers, hey, like uncle cannot read this translation, we need to change the translations, or like this auntie has problem with the OTP code and it just isn't getting through, they don't understand how to use it. So it was just sort of fast and furious WhatsApping each other to try to fix whatever bugs or whatever usability issues we encountered in those 2 days of user research. It was more like frantic user testing more than anything. Yeah, so I think ideally we would have time or weeks or even months to really study user needs, but sometimes we don't. So all we could do in those crisis situation is to put forward our best guess of around what the user needs or what could work, and then go from there.
That's really crazy. 2 weeks actually. Was that like sort of 24 hours? Not 24 hours, maybe like 12-hour work day, almost in a way.
I can't recall. I think we couldn't quite tell day from night that 2 weeks. And I think a lot of us missed Christmas and New Year. Yeah. But thankfully, you know, we were actually, I distinctly remember celebrating Christmas with Christabel and having some German sausages in the office.
I don't even remember.
Yes, from Brewworks. From Brewworks.
Yeah, I mean, that was completely like building the plane as you're flying it mode. And I think that's where like it really helps that we had built experience, product engineering and like design experience from like whatever work we've done before. And like, so the designers are not represented here, but they play like a huge part in our user research and testing process. What they did in like for vaccine ops is like a super compressed version of what they would usually do, right? In their like typical work. So for example, for Scam Show, what we're having now is like a user research exercise. So they go out and they do user interviews. So our designers actually set up together with like our corporate team, like OpenGeo Telegram group, where the public signs up, like just join the Telegram group. And whenever we need any user research interviews or like we have beta tests for our apps, then we'll contact people on there to see if they're interested. So that's like a great channel for public outreach. And so the designers for Scam Show tapped on that in order to do user interviews, and part of what they do is like to create user profiles to capture like the main insights of who we need to like solve the problem for, and then from there they go on to have like their design studio where they prototype. The rest of the team sits into critique, and then once we have like the prototype designed, we build that and then we go back to our users again to test it out. So that's like the ideal flow, and then all of that was like super compressed for all the like COVID-19 projects.
I was just thinking that must be like a great, well, not a great, but like a really strong team bonding exercise. Just your 2 weeks, like. So I mean, we're kind of almost running out of time, but I just like to ask if anyone would like to find out more about careers at OGP. How can they do that?
We've got our website, open.gov.sg, and there is a apply now button, like smack in the middle of the page. So yes, please feel free to check them out if you're interested in any of the roles. I think we are aggressively hiring for software engineers, product designers, and product managers. Yes.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me personally as well. I've like put my email there if you want to just find out more about OGP. Like, very happy to share. Yeah.
Oh, I think Karen actually, did you?
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Karen. I just wanted to say like that was really inspiring because I'm still in high school and I have like I'm like really stressed out about like what I want to do in the future and stuff. And like seeing you guys like make such a big commitment to our community, it just makes me so happy and like it's really inspiring. Yeah, that's all that's all I wanted to say.
Oh, that's really nice to hear. I'm really glad that this session was really informative for you. And
Yeah.
so I think we're at the end of this event. Where was I, intern from Sarah? So thank you so much for joining. And actually, I'm just going to quickly share the socials page for Women Who Code. Feel free to definitely do check out our socials to keep yourself updated with our next events. I think we've got one in next week for like interview ready series to get yourself prepared for interviews for especially data science. And that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for joining. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Mm.